Our last program featured the music of Vivaldi, and our next program in April is going to feature the music of Mozart. We're going to actually start with his first symphony and end with his last symphony. We're also going to be featuring his 27th piano concerto, which is probably the last piece that he wrote. Mozart was influenced by one of J.S. Bach's sons, J.C. Bach, who lived in London. The Mozart family was traveling in 1764, when Mozart was just 8, to London, and he came under this wonderful composer's influence, and it really made quite a mark on Mozart. It caused him to write his first symphony, which has got all sorts of mature and quirky transitional elements to it. It was a difficult time traveling. People always became ill on these long, torturous journeys. We take traveling so much for granted today, but Mozart's father became ill on this trip, and they actually moved out of the centre of London to Chelsea, which is where Mozart wrote his first symphony. He used a little theme in that symphony, sort of chant-like, which appears in his 41st symphony. So there's a lovely connection here between the beginning and the end of his career in music. The piano concerto we're going to play was written possibly at the same time as his last symphony, in the summer of 1788. It wasn't performed, however, until the last year of Mozart's life, in March of 1791, when Mozart was to die in December of that year. It may have been written after the last symphony, but the paper was the same that was used for the symphony and for the piano concerto. The last symphony was written at the same time as the 40th symphony and the 39th. Within 3 months he wrote those last 3 symphonies, and at the same time lost a 6-month daughter that had been born at the end of the year before. The Jupiter Symphony is a majestic piece. It has, as I mentioned, the theme that is used in his first symphony. It appears at the end of the trio, and then there's a connection into the last movement where it's used the most. And the finale, the last section of the last symphony, is one of the most sophisticated pieces of counterpoint. Mozart had got to know the music of Bach and of Handel in, I think, about 1782 or 3, and it influenced his writing, and it's not surprising that his music would become more dense, would become more contrapuntal, and we find that at the end of his last symphony, where he stacks up 5 themes all on top of each other, creating this majestic sound that somebody years later must have reminded them of reaching for the stars, perhaps. The last piano concerto was completed in January of 1791 and performed by Mozart in March of that year, and probably the last time he was performed. He performed. He became ill in September of 91, died in December. So this is a wonderful sort of brief survey of Mozart's life, simply by the beginning and the end. But I think you'll find it very stimulating.